In the history of Israel, marked by highs and lows, times of glory and times of darkness, figures emerge whose legacy goes beyond their individual acts. Elisha is one of these figures who, even though he began his path in a senile and modest way, ended up leaving an indelible hue in the spiritual and social narrative of his pueblo. I was not a prophet who commanded attention with grandiose gestures from the beginning. He is not remembered for calling the fire from the sky, nor for spectacular confrontations against false kings and dioceses. However, your life embodies persistent fidelity, grace that operates in everyday life, and firmness in the midst of adversity. Elisha took Elias's mantle and assumed the responsibility of sustaining the divine call in times that seemed likely to put it out. This is a story about a man who, from a rural and simple context, became the spokesperson of God, an instrument capable of renewing the hope of a divided and troubled town. It is the story of a spiritual legacy that does not die with the founder, but that was carried forward by faithful disciples who understand that power does not reside in one, but in continuity and obedience. Elisha was a man from Safat, a peasant from Abel Meha, a small rural village in northern Israel. His early life was sensual and marked by agricultural labor, a humble existence that connected him with the land and its rhythms. However, his destiny changed abruptly when the prophet Elias met him and cast his cloak as a symbol of the transfer of prophetic power. This act was not just symbolic, it was a radical call that Elisha responded to without hesitation. He left his friends and ran after Elias, abandoning his old life to embrace a call mucho mayor. His readiness to obey reveals a decided character and open to divine action. Throughout his ministry, Elisha demonstrated on the ground that he was a man of faith, as well as an accessible and compassionate leader who was concerned about the needs of the most vulnerable and who acted with determination in the face of injustice and the problems of the pueblo. Elisha lived at a crucial moment for ancient Israel, a period of political fragmentation, external pressures, and spiritual crisis. The northern kingdom, known simply as Israel, was separated from the kingdom of Judah, and under the reign of monarchs such as Ahazias and Jehu, faced military threats from powers such as Syria and Assyria, and the constant attempt to surrender to idolatrous cults, especially that of Baal. This turbulent context means that the role of the prophets was especially relevant because they were the voice of God to denounce corruption, call for repentance, and bring messages of hope. Elias, Elisha's maestro, was a prophet of direct confrontation, facing kings and false dioceses with courage. However, Elisha took a complementary route, maintaining the spiritual struggle, but with a focus that combined miracle, teaching, and pastoral support. The northern kingdom was in constant danger, and Elisha had to deal with military threats, as well as a society that had strayed from the path of God. Your ministry was a light in the middle of the storm. The relationship between Elisha and Elias is fundamental to understanding the ministry of the first. Elias on the ground was his maestro, just like the prophet who gave him the authority to continue his mission. When Elias was taken to the sky in a fire engine, Elisha received a double portion of his spirit, a sign that responsibility fell on his shoulders. This act is symbolic. It represents the transmission of the divine Lama from one generation to another, and the need for there to be successors who keep the mission alive. Elisha honored Elias's legacy, continuing to confront idolatry, but also adding a dimension of mercy and care to his actions. Elisha's life is marked by an impressive series of miracles that on earth demonstrate the power of God, which also underlines the prophet's commitment to restoration and social justice. Among the most highlighted, the purification of the water of Jericho, the contaminated water that put the city at risk, was remedied by Elisha through a simple but powerful act, restoring life and prosperity to the place. The multiplication of acceptance for the widow. A woman on the edge of poverty received the miracle that saved her family from slavery, showing divine providence in everyday life. The resurrection of the Shunammite child, an impactful miracle that reaffirmed the power of God over death and the importance of faith. The recovery of General Naaman from leprosy. This act crossed borders and taught that the grace of God is for everyone, without importing nationality or status. The multiplication of food for multitudes. Elisha anticipated the abundance that God offers to those who trust in him. Miraculous protection against enemy attacks. Elisha showed that God is the faithful protector of the village. Each miracle was also a message of hope and renewal, a call to trust in the power of God even in adverse circumstances. Elisha on the ground performed miracles even though he faced political and spiritual challenges. I have to deal with kings who oscillated between the search for advice and rejection, with priests and false prophets who intended to divert the pueblo, and with a society marked by corruption and fear. His loyalty led him to act with courage, even when he was in danger. For example, in several reports it is shown how Elisha was miraculously protected, and how his enemies could not fight him. Furthermore, your spiritual leadership must respond to social crises like turmoil and wars, offering a message that combines justice, mercy, and faith. Elisha stands out for his humility and perseverance. I was not a prophet who sought fame, but who worked in silence day after day, sustaining the faith of the pueblo with patience and firmness. His style was pastoral and practical, concerned with the concrete needs of the people, but always with authority and direct connection with God. He was a man of deep prayer, capable of listening to the divine voice and acting accordingly. Elisha showed a balance between firmness in the face of sin and compassion towards weaknesses, consolidating a ministry that spanned generations. Elisha left a lasting legacy on the ground in Israel as part of the global spiritual tradition. His life is an example that God can use common personas to do extraordinary things. The concept of prophetic succession, so important for the continuity of faith, finds in Elisha a perfect model. It shows that strength is not at the beginning of the mission, but in loyalty until the end. His story also inspires leaders, pastors, and believers to cultivate patience, humility, and dependence on God, essential values for any ministry or vocation. The story of Elisha is a powerful testimony for all of us. Constant fidelity can change the course of history. We are not all called to be the first to raise the voice, but only to be able to keep the call alive. Elisha invites us to consider our own call. Are we willing to pick up the mantle, to face the difficulties with faith, and to be instruments of blessing in dark times? Are we faithful when we are small so that God can trust us when we are big? May this story inspire you to walk, reminding you that greatness lies in obedience and perseverance, and that God works powerfully when his servants remain firm. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel to continue discovering stories that illuminate faith. And we tell you in the comments, what did you learn from Elisha, the prophet who led the divine Llama?